Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to 50 by 50, whatever happened to the Harvard class of 1976. I'm Michael Conniff. I'll be your host, and I can attest to this because I was a member of I guess I am a member of the class of 1976. And today, I'm very happy to be joined by Magdalena Guernica Castleman, one of our classmates, and I guess as you said, the third Cuban in the class. Is that
That's
right?
right. Yep. Maria
Um,
Suarez, Teresita, and me.
where did you come to Harvard from? You were a U.S. citizen, I presume, right? Where did you come from?
Well, yes, we left Havana when I was about 5,
Okay.
and we could not leave, directly to the United States. We didn't have that. Later on, you were allowed to immigrate. And so my father basically, had worked for an American company, and he had basically taken all of their money out of Cuba. And so they said, let's get you to Mexico as soon as we can. My father was very, vocal
Mhm.
against Castro's regime, so we basically had to leave. And we were in Mexico City because that's where we could go. So I lived there until the age of 13. And my father's goal was basically to try to get us to the United States. And he eventually established residency in the United States and moved us all. The company that he was working for was a large pharmaceutical company that had headquarters on 42nd Street. So he basically didn't want us to grow up in New York City. Then looked up what is the best public school system, and so I moved to Scarsdale,
Okay.
Scarsdale, New York.
I spent 5 years, first to fifth grade, in New Rochelle, next door. I know Westchester County, and my dad in '64 ran for Congress in Westchester County. So have some deep roots there. I'm really curious. You left Cuba at age 5. Do you remember anything? You were quite young, but do you remember anything about Cuba?
I do. I have some very few memories, but I do remember that there was a big, I had 3 sisters at the time. My mother was pregnant with my 4th sister, 8 months pregnant.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, I remember that there being shooting around our house and having to hide, and glass shattering, and control points where, there were militares everywhere. And so, before we went away, and we really had to get out. So my parents had this huge goodbye party for us at, there was a Cuban Coney Island.
Mhm.
So they rented the entire Coney Island, and there were nannies there with their children. I remember that there was a piñata, and I have some pictures of it, but not many, where they pulled all these strings, and white doves, flew out, and the nannies were running around trying to get the doves with their. I mean, it was
Hmm.
the decadent part of Havana. Let me
Uh-huh.
put it that way at the time. And then my parents had a huge party at the Hotel Nacional. My sister Frances broke her arm the night before we were leaving, and all I remember is being snuck in somewhere. I believe it was an embassy. I'm not sure. A few other things. Williams, believe it or not, was my safety. But my father was a very really difficult man, and he just did not want me to go to Harvard, that libertine school. And that's
Liberty.
really where I felt that I would probably, when I went to visit, I spent time, when after I'd been accepted, I spent time at Yale and at Princeton and at Harvard, and I just felt like I belonged at Harvard for some
Yeah.
reason.
We're talking with Magdalena Guernica Castleman. This is 50 by 50, whatever happened to the class of 1976. I'm Michael Conniff, your host. You kind of caught yourself there when you were talking about your dad. Where did he want you to go? If not Harvard,
Westchester Community College and commute.
and just to keep you under his thumb, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Exactly.
how did your vision of your future differ from his vision of your future?
It was that I was going to be completely independent of
Okay, so you're
completely whatever I needed to do.
Your vision was 180 degrees different than his, which was,
Yes, and it
was
was
probably
right.
that you would, stay close to the family and, raise kids as he would have liked you to. Is that kind of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how hard was it to break away from that? Did he try to stop you from going to Harvard?
It was hard. I mean, I remember when we were moving into to there, and you know, walking up the stairs, bring my things, and I see my father grab Michael Blau and Michael Friedman and say, "What are you boys doing in this dorm?"
This is your first day.
Yes, he's bringing up my suitcases, and that's how I met Michael Blau. And they were trying to help, and then my father said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "We live here." So he started unpacking everything and taking it back to the car.
You mean repacking?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a story. So he goes like, there are men in the dorm, you can't stay here.
Exactly.
He repacks your stuff, and what happens next?
And then my mother did what the typical Latin mother does. She had a breakdown, started crying. No, Pedro, no, no, por favor, boom, boom, boom. So then eventually everything had to go back up to my room, and they left, and that was it.
Oh man, that's a keeper. That story. Uh, Number one, because clearly, also based on what you said about your father in Scarsdale, he didn't understand our culture. He didn't understand that some of the defaults of our culture, which is okay. They're going to be men involved, and you're not going to be able to control them really, uh,
Yes,
and you're not going to be able to stop a daughter from being very independent, right? Which is what you were. So
yes.
finally, I assume you got your clothes back, you got your clothes unpacked, and so what was Harvard the way you expected, or were your expectations met, exceeded, or just different than what you thought? Was it different?
I loved, loved, loved being at Harvard. I mean, to me, it was one of the happiest, has been one of the happiest times of my life. I mean, when I got to Harvard, I got there with sophomore standing, which many of us had. But and my intent was to study comparative literature. And this is interesting because Harvard did not have an undergraduate comp lit department. So the requirements were that you had to be absolutely fluent in three languages.
Uh,
And that criteria had not been met by an undergraduate. So immediately after I got there, I had to sort of fight. And this is what I want to do. Look, I could have done it at Yale. You guys asked me to come here. Yale has a comp lit department. So basically, they put me through all of these different tests, and it was called English Option Two. I had it created during and I think English Option Three was creative writing, but English Option Two became comp lit,
okay, and so what did you study?
comparative literature for and my father wanted me out of there as soon as possible so that supposedly I was going to do 3 years, get my BA, MA in comp lit, and then go get a PhD in comp lit. However, around my junior year, when I was working on my thesis, it was actually my senior year, I was on my final thesis, which then would become my MA thesis too. I It was a really several things affected this, but basically I had gone home, and my father was again, you can't, if you're going to be home, you have to be, setting rules, do this, do that. And then I had been involved in a relationship at Harvard for about 3 years, and he broke up with me, and I felt again, and it was something where he had control. So I really said, done with this, done, done, done. I will never ever let a man tell me what to do again. I'm going to make enough money to be okay without having to rely on anybody, father, boyfriend, no one. So in my junior year, did a switch and started taking economics courses, and I took 2 courses at Harvard Business School.
Mm.
by special arrangement, which I really enjoyed.
Mm.
And so then made a complete pivot. Ended up, I was going to go to Harvard Business School, but then I deferred it and ended up not going because that boyfriend was there. So I said nope. So then I went through the Chase Credit Training Program,
Mm.
which was, again, I think Elizabeth had talked about what bank training programs were like when you interviewed her. So I went through through the Chase Credit Training Program, ended up becoming a commercial banker and then an investment banker. So a complete other switch.
Wow, that is when I asked about comp lit, I was my question was what literature were you comparing to what literature? Like what did
Oh,
you what was
what languages? Sorry.
yeah, not
French,
just
Spanish, and
languages, but
English.
actual I'm curious about what works were studied. What books were
Sorry, Michael.
what books were studied, not just languages, but what did you I'm just asking as of somebody who
Oh, okay, got it.
was curious, yeah.
So basically, I did French, English, American and British literature, and Spanish literature, which included Spain and Latin America. So I tended to concentrate on, 19th century Spanish, French authors. And also I was really into poetry. So, Garcia Lorca, all of the generation of, it was called the Generación del 98. So I was, basically, I was, poetry was a big part of what I read, but, and what I studied, but it was pretty much scattered around, 19th, 20th century literature.
And we're going to circle back to Bobby Gordon, who was your first, I guess, your first or an early boyfriend at Harvard, and you had a very important role in his life later on, which is fascinating, which we're going to get to. But before we get to that, I want to understand as you enroll in the Chase program, as you begin your career. You've made this switch because you want to be independent. Did you achieve that in your life?
Yes,
You did. Okay.
financially independent,
So right
absolutely.
now you're comfortable. You live in a nice place in Florida, and it's a box that you've checked, right?
It is. I mean, things were difficult. My husband, Sam, died when I was 46. So, am I comfortable? Yes, I'm comfortable. I'm more comfortable. It could have been a lot more, but I'm
Yeah.
perfectly comfortable and happy with the way financially my
Yeah.
life is.
So what was your career like as a commercial banker and investment banker? And also, again, I'll come back to being, the third Cuban American in our class, one of three. I'm curious whether that had any impact on your career, whether that helped you or hurt you in any way.
You mean being Cuban at Harvard?
Just being a person of Cuban descent moving into the business world.
Oh, definitely. There were prejudices there.
Yeah.
Um, but, fortunately, and that's one of the things I did in Scarsdale was walk around with a tape recorder and annoy everybody because I was told that after 13, I would always have an accent. And I said, no, nope, not going to have an accent when I speak English because then I'll be discriminated against.
So
So,
you would record people you knew who did not have an accent.
yeah, I walk around talking to people and recording them while I ask questions, recording them, then playing it to myself and driving everybody nuts.
Oh, that's amazing. And so, what how did you manifest um, being a Cuban American? How did you what did you do as you got older, as you got into the working world? Um, was it were you observing customs? Were you Cinco de Mayo? Whatever it would be. Was it important to you?
Not, I think that, I mean, there wasn't anything
Yeah.
except for the fact that I am, I can have a short fuse at times. I'm a part Basque, part Huguenot, part Cuban, and
Yeah.
I'm, very emotive, and so,
Yeah.
I felt those. But being a woman as an investment banker. And I don't know too many of them in our class. I know Debbie McLean was an investment. I know that Elizabeth did, but she was at Morgan Stanley, but she did wealth management.
Yeah.
And I was, doing investment banking and traveling really throughout the world.
And
Um,
when you were at Harvard, were you struck by? Did you consider yourself at Harvard or at Radcliffe or at Harvard Radcliffe or some combination? Because your class of
I didn't have
04,
those issues.
you didn't. Okay, why
No,
not?
it was Harvard Radcliffe,
Yeah,
and I had friends at the Cliff and at the Yard, and
yeah.
I really didn't, I just thought we were all one. I agree with many of the women that you've spoken to that we didn't have much guidance who to go to, who to talk to. There was very
No.
little, you know, but no, to me, I was happy being in the Yard. I didn't like Mather House because of the way it looked, but I mean, yeah.
I have never met a person who liked Mather House, I don't think you're alone there. But you mentioned your husband. Did you have any children?
Yes, I have one child whose name is Sophia. Yeah,
Sophia. Okay.
Sophia.
So, and I'm very sorry to hear about his passing. So that was
Thank you.
some years ago, right? More than 20 years
Yeah,
ago. And
yeah.
what did he do?
Sam was also a banker, and he was the managing director of the Chase Manhattan Trust Corporation. And he was
What's the press corporation?
he handled trust accounts overseas. Basically,
So pretty important job. And so did you, when you were growing up, did you think, one day I'm going to be a banker, or did that come as kind of a surprise to you?
oh, it came as a major surprise. Really,
Uh-huh.
it took me. I mean, as I said, it was a sort of a lot of. I think of Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet, who
Yeah.
said, "If you dare to ask yourselves the question, you will one day live yourself into the answer." And so, and he says, all of life is gestation, and he's right. He says this in Letters to a Young Poet, which is, an amazing book. But I I basically just felt that. To be myself. And that I needed challenges. I didn't think that I was, I have very little patience. I taught, won a fellowship to teach at Northfield, Mount Hermon, and between my years at Harvard, and I ended up throwing erasers at my students because.
Well, that's fun. I actually
Mhm.
went to my school was Canterbury School, and there was a guy named Jim Breen who took me around when I was applying, and at one point he threw an eraser at a student, and I said, I think I'm going to like this place, so that's where I ended up going. So the importance of an eraser, but no, what's interesting is this dichotomy between the comparative lit, the business, the economics. But were you able to maintain or even extend your love of literature, even though you shifted into sort of in some ways, I would say, a more practical path?
Yes, I did. And particularly, I mean, I continued, all my life to read in different languages.
Hmm.
But, when and particularly with being an investment banker, there were many situations in which I really felt my soul could be compromised. So you've got any investment banker that tells you otherwise is basically lying.
And
Okay. I mean,
there's if I could jump in, I would say because I'm sort of doing some of this kind of work now, and it's because there's a lot at stake, right? I mean, there's a lot
yes,
of money at stake. There are companies at stake. There are careers at stake, and so people, they what's the right way to put this? That line between doing the right thing and doing other things sort of blurs.
yes.
That's how I would put it. Would you put it that way?
I would definitely do it. And I think that I had an additional problem, which was my the male clients, and I was always fighting off. I'm not, I mean, this is not a happy part of my career, but, there were sexual, it happened more than once, you
Yeah,
know. And
unwelcome advances. So when did that start? Did that
let's
happen
see,
at
yes,
Harvard? Were there, because certainly people have come forward with with reports
never at
of
Harvard.
inappropriate behavior, to say the least. But when did it happen to you first as a banker?
I've completed the training program, and then I was doing the financial analysis, and then I said to them that I was supposed to go back to Harvard or to Wharton because I deferred both, and I said to them that, you know, if they could find me a job that where I could travel throughout the world, I'd be very happy. And of course, you know, it's like, yeah, those jobs. I didn't want to do corporate financing or anything like that. So they did. And I ended up doing international real estate financing. And so that's, I mean, I'd walk into a plane and the bank would fly me first class, and I'd see a man remove his ring and put it in his pocket.
No kidding.
And you know, I mean, lots, those were the, you know, minor things, but I literally was thrown against the wall of I mean, down in Wall Street, and almost raped by, you know, by someone. So
Right in an office, it sounds like somebody's
yeah,
office.
where the telephone building is was all dark at night.
Yeah, I know
I
that
was
building.
coming out of Chase Manhattan Plaza, and then, as I said, it's sort of and you know, including uh, people that are politically very prominent to this day, you know, that were involved in, you know, commercial real estate, and that was really difficult because I mean, I was given, Europe was my territory,
Hmm.
and so, you know, I would go to Europe and spend a lot of time in Europe, and then I was given Asia, and then I was given Latin America. But, you know, again, it was even when I was in Europe, in Milano, you know, the son of a client, again, literally, I mean, those are not good memories. Mm.
And I'm guessing now, but I'm guessing that maybe one of the things that made that even harder was that you couldn't, in those days, it was very difficult to report that information and get
Oh,
any kind of satisfaction, right? And not put your career at risk. Is that how you would?
absolutely. It was the first time it happened to me. I went back, and again, this was in the limousine of uh, a politically important person who then put my hand in his pants, and I just grabbed it, put it in his pants, and I started kicking the door of the limousine. And eventually I rolled out on Fifth Avenue and went back to the bank, and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. What
You
is
like
this? I'm
fell
not
out of
doing this.
literally kind of fell out of the car to get away from this person?
Yes. And the chauffeur, because it had a partition, and so he couldn't see what was happening. And I just started kicking and kicking and kicking until they
Good
let
for
me
you.
out. And I went back to the bank, and at that time I was at Bankers Trust, small investment bank, which was then bought by Deutsche Bank. And I said, I can't do this. I can't, this is not. And then what, finally, I raised such hell, the next time it happened with somebody else, that I said, that's it. I'm calling the bank's lawyers. I'm not going to deal with this anymore.
Good for you. And what happened when you did?
Yeah, what I did is very interesting. I was then told had been made a senior. I was about to be made a senior vice president. I was told, you will never get promoted for having reported this.
Yeah, they blamed you. They blamed
Sorry.
you. They blamed you
Yeah.
like it was your fault.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they said your career is going to go in the toilet. And
Yeah.
so did you go ahead and report it anyway?
Oh, of course. Of
And did that
course.
happen? Did you not get promoted?
I did eventually, and it was what ended up happening. My husband Sam, uh, there was it was actually there was this is what there was a very bad third incident, and that was when the executive vice president of the International Investment Management group who insisted on going with me to Brazil. And I said, no, you don't speak Portuguese, you don't speak Spanish. I do, I don't need you to come with me to Brazil. And so then so I said, okay. He came anyway. And when I arrived in Rio, we've been given interconnecting suites. So I basically went back downstairs and spoke to the women at the desk in Portuguese and told them, he wants to be near me. I'm not staying. Find me another room. But my husband and this man kept after me. It was awful. And when I told Sam the story, Sam went to Yale. Goes, well, the vice chairman of Bankers Trust went to Yale. I know him, so I'm going to put a stop to this immediately. And, so he basically called Alfie Woodward and told him, this is what's X person is doing this, and it was really interesting because, nothing happened right away, but 10 months later he was fired.
Oh, well, that's as close as you're going to get to a happy ending on that story.
Exactly.
Right. Well, that's good for you. So good, and good for your husband.
Yeah.
To take advantage of old school ties. Well, Magda, I think you wrote me. I want to circle back to Bobby Gordon, who has been much remembered in these. I didn't know Bobby as well as you did, and as well as a lot of people did, though I did know him from the Birch Buy for President campaign in 1976, the erstwhile Birch Buy campaign. He got 5% and was out of the race after the Massachusetts primary. But I had a lot of respect for Bobby, and Bobby, knew even before I did that he wanted to be a novelist. So there's only a few in our class. I'm actually talking to Kurt Anderson later, very soon, and he's a novelist, but also many other things.
Yes,
but it's a short list. It's a short list, and some people are now writing novels, so that's great. But Bobby was the real deal. He was totally serious about it, and wrote novels and stories, and also taught writing at a prison. But I want to go back to 1972 in the fall when we got to Harvard, and you and Bobby, you and Bobby were girlfriend and boyfriend for a while.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Tell me about that. You and him.
Well, we sort of met walking around. I was walking around Harvard Yard, and he was in a dorm across from Thayer, and I had met his roommates, and so we just started spending time together, and yeah, that was my first my first boyfriend at Harvard, and I was that's that sort of love that you have when you're 19 years old, and but then I basically felt I just said, well, I've only we literally met like I met him like the first week, and then we sort of started hanging around, and then after that I just said I need to see other people, and this is too soon, and blah blah blah. So it basically ended.
So it ended sort of at the end of your freshman year, or during your freshman year?
Yes, during my freshman year.
You found another boyfriend you mentioned earlier you were with mostly. But I want to tell people who are listening to this that this story is the most unbelievable story I've heard in all these podcasts. And you wrote me a letter about it, and I know it's a tough one to talk about, but take me back to the last week, the last day of freshman year. You and Bobby reconnected, right?
Yeah. We just were, it was really like I think graduation was 2 days away, and I was walking around the yard, and, he had seen me, and he just started, coming towards me, and he said, why don't we just lie on the grass and pretend like it was freshman year?
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So that's right before graduation. And did you ever think that you and at that point, while you're still at Harvard, that you and Bobby would marry and have a life together? Was it ever
No,
never like that?
no,
So
no.
it was love. So
Oh yeah, and I mean, but I knew what Bobby wanted to do, and he basically wanted to just. Bobby wanted to give himself to others
hmm
through his teaching, through his, he was very selfless in that sense.
yeah,
And I knew that the trajectory of his life, he was not someone who cared about material comforts or any of those things. And
hmm
I just knew that given who I am, I would need more, excitement in my life and more, security than that
yeah. And
relationship.
you mentioned independence being important too. So so you guys go your own ways, and then Bobby gets sick. And I didn't realize until I read your email. I guess he had lupus, and
Lupus, and he had he'd had a couple of what they thought were strokes, and he was, had other psychiatric issues where he was hallucinating and coming in and out of reality. Basically, his heart had been weakened. It was one thing after another that he'd
he
had.
had some. And how old was he at that point?
I mean, so it was, when did he die? 2012?
Okay,
I don't know. How old were we?
so
I
so
guess, I don't, well, it was, let's say, I was 48, 40, and maybe more than that. I don't remember.
yeah, yeah. And your husband had passed away at that point. It sounds like.
Yes,
So
yes.
you're on your own at that point.
And
And
I was with Jonathan, who I, met a few years after Sam died. And,
mhm.
he knew that when I went to see Bobby, he knew I was going to see Bobby. I said, I have to do this.
Yeah, and that's sort of the key turn in the story. So, I guess at a certain point, you realize that Bobby was dying, and that Bobby. I did not know this, but it's an amazing story. It's a novel. It's an amazing story. So Bobby decided um, that he was going to, to use the phrase "die with dignity," that he was going to um, take his own life at a certain point because his life was full of pain and was just tough on everybody, including people around him. And when did you go out to be with him when you found that
A
out?
week before he died. So he died actually 9 days. So February 16th. And, basically, he wanted to see me. I know that
Yeah.
I did not know that decision had been made, that he had decided to end
Oh,
his life through death with dignity until I got there.
you didn't.
You
So you
know,
just went out because he asked you to come out,
he
and
wanted to see me
he was.
36 years later.
And
And at that point,
what was your impression 36 years later? Obviously, he's in a tough situation, but what were your feelings like?
oh, I mean, absolute love, for what he was ever, and, he'd been married and his wife had left him, and he was really, and then he had broken off contact with his family. So he was really, really alone. And, something in me, I just felt I had to go and be with him. I did, once I got to Seattle, and he was just incredibly frail. I mean, he walked with a cane, and he was in and out of, because of the medication and the painkillers. But that's when he said to me, I have made this decision. And I tried to, discuss it with him and say, are you sure this is what you want? I could see how visibly the suffering was really, he was in pain practically all the time.
Yeah. Did you
And
try to
so
talk him out of it at any point?
it was impossible to talk him out of it. I actually even tried to say, well, Bobby, please, should we notify your family? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Really?
He did
He didn't
not want his
want to know.
family notified.
So just you. You were. Was there anyone else there who was around?
Yes, Matt, who was a very good friend, who we'd met in Seattle,
Hmm.
who I met the minute that he was there, that I got there, and he told me I, have offered to be with Bobby. I think he wants you with him as well. And then I had to, sort of decide, am I going to be there and watch him die, basically?
Yeah.
So, but
And was it
before,
legal to do what he wanted to do in Washington in 2010?
was it easy?
Legal? Was it legal?
Yes, obviously. Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
it's
Two
legal. So
states,
he had the
Washington and Oregon at the time.
yeah, the two northwestern states. So he has a right to do this. He decides he's going to do it. He calls
Yes,
you.
the way I
You go out
had
there.
to go to the doctor with him because, again, I wanted to, you know, make sure that this is legal, what he's, I mean, it was, and they said, yes, the way we've done it is it, he couldn't, just do this right away. They gave you a period of 4 months or something like that
Yeah,
where, reconsider it. Do you still want to do this? But it was very, they explained to me that they would be sending these women, to his apartment who would be administering the medication.
yeah. And and so I'm just curious about the details. So there was a date set, right? And the date ended up changing, but you sort of knew what the day was. At a certain point, you had to actually leave, right? You had to go.
Yes,
You had some obligations that you couldn't change, and so Bobby went ahead, but I do know that you were basically on the phone with him, right?
yes. What?
When he took I guess he had a bottle of wine, and he took the pills, and you knew it was gonna. You said his heart was stronger than you expected, so it took 2 hours, but you were
Yeah,
really on the phone with him that whole time.
yeah. It was. Again, he once I was there, and then he said was set for he had chose Valentine's Day, February 14th, and then some the women from Death with Dignity had to change it to the 16th, and I had been gone. It was a new work, and I had been gone for 9 days. I had to get back, so um, what Bobby wanted me to do was to call him. He called me when he woke up that day, and basically stay in contact with him the whole time until these women came, and
Sure.
then as you said, I'd gotten him a bottle of red wine, and then when he took the medication, I was basically told he will lose consciousness within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, which he did, and then they said, but then it'll take about 45 minutes to an hour for his heart to stop. And I kept talking to him the whole time, just saying, I love you, I love you. You're going to be at peace. You're going to be at peace. And I kept doing that. And then they kept checking his heart, and they expected him to die a lot sooner than he did. But then they said, my God, he's hanging on. And it took 2 hours, and that was really, really, really difficult.
Well, anyone who knew Bobby knew he did have a big heart, and so do you.
Thank bless you. Yeah, it was, what you think about, Michael, I think that, what you're doing for us is really all about love, you know, loving each other and caring for each other.
Yeah,
And
I appreciate that, and also I think um, telling these stories that need to be told. They're not always. Not everybody's life is interesting, right? It just doesn't work that way.
no,
But everybody has interesting things that happen to them and important things that happen to them, and
yes,
moments where they decide and their life goes in a certain way. So I think it's really been um, we all have a personal history, right? I was a history major. We all
I,
have personal history. You starting in Cuba in particular have a very dramatic personal history, and the stuff with Bobby um, is somebody should write a novel. If it were him, he'd be writing a novel about it right
oh, he
now.
would have. He said, and he left me like a couple of chapters of the new novel he was working on, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
right to the end.
he
But
asked me to write this story, and I said, I don't know if I can,
really,
Bobby.
okay, so he knew that his life had become an incredible story, and your part, it couldn't have happened without you. You're a huge part of it. And just the whole sequence of going out with them, then meeting 2 days before graduation, then not seeing each other, and then being there the last week of his life. That is quite a trajectory. I want to ask you. We just have a couple minutes, but I do want to ask you what are you looking forward to in the rest of your life? What are you looking forward to do? What's next for you?
Well, let's see now. I After I finished with banking at Sam, I lived in the Bahamas with Sam because he was the managing director of the Chase. But I also got work there part time. But then I decided that I was done with all that, and I started working for the New York Public Library. I got
Oh,
an MLS and
really?
ran the business division
Oh,
at
wow.
the New York Public Library. And another nerdy thing to do. But
You must
anyway,
have loved that though, surrounded by books. You must have loved that.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
did, but then Sam died, and I had to go back to Wall Street, which was one of the hardest because Sophia's tuition at private school in New York City was $25,000.
Ouch.
You know, so I went back. That was a difficult to get back into the financial world. But what I'm doing and hope to be doing is um, I am trying to do. I'm teaching, literacy to foreigners, basically, to
Oh,
through the public library.
oh, that's great. Down there in Florida?
Hmm. It's a
Oh,
real need for it. I mean, I always said I would never live in Florida, but I had some serious health issues, which is one of the reasons I couldn't go to the reunion. I had very serious, health issues with my back and all sorts of things. But
no.
I wanted to be able to do something, and the level of education here is not really good, but there is a real need for doing ESL. And
English
I,
is
I do it through the pro literacy program at the
yeah.
library.
Well, listen, this has been incredible. Thank you for doing this. Obviously, it was not easy for you. These are important memories that you've been good enough to share with your with us with your classmates. And sorry you couldn't be at reunion, but I feel like we know each other now. We should
I
stay in
do
touch.
too.
And best of luck with your health. I know about back problems, so I
Yes.
hear you. I hear you. But take care of that. And I know for sure. I know Bobby Bobby Gordon's friends are going to listen to this from Harvard because there's a bunch of them, and this is
Good.
going to mean a lot to them. So thank you for doing this,
And
and really
but thank
appreciate it.
you, Michael. Thank you for all the time. I mean, as I said, this is, what you've done is a labor of love. And I mean, you're so creative. Eventually you'll figure out what to do with all of these. But there, that's the thing. We were all incredibly, very different, and just so
Yeah.
many interesting, special people.
Yeah, there's some real nuggets in here. I one of the things I have an assistant who helps me, and I said let's put these all on YouTube, and then let's do some YouTube shorts. Which is sort of like which could really lend itself to
Yeah,
some of the things could be really interesting. But no,
yeah.
it's been great for me, which is so funny because I was 6 weeks out from reunion. I had only done one, Chris Taylor. Like if I don't do this, nobody's going to notice, and I could just fade away. And then I just said, well, I said I was going to do it, so I should do it, and luckily I did. So it's really been the gift that keeps on giving. That's what I call it.
Well,
Well,
we're
listen, you've been great, and stay in touch, stay
thank
healthy, and I used to say see you at the reunion, and before the reunion, but I think I'm going to keep saying that. So see you at the reunion.
Yes. And we'll keep in touch.
The next one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You take care.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye bye.
Ciao.